I thought
Right.
his paper was the
We
other
call to order.
three. Yes.
Yeah. Call to order the meeting of the Eastham Select Board. And I think we have the Finance Committee here, so I'll go to Mary, call that to order.
And I'd like to call the Finance Committee meeting in order. We do have a quorum. We have two members that are Zooming. We have Roy Morelli and Paul Brown that are Zooming.
All right. Thank you. So, of course, we have to start with one of my jokes, right?
How do we
Okay.
get every?
How did Benjamin Franklin feel when he discovered electricity?
He was shocked.
Doc, you got it.
You got one.
All right. You get the prize. I don't know. I'll have to find one. I don't know. All right. Oh, I forgot to read this. This meeting will be video recorded and broadcast over local access channel 8 and through the town website at www.eastham-ma.gov. Rich, do we have EverSource on? Okay. So now I will call to order the public hearing, a poll hearing, and read it. A public hearing will be held on Monday, March 23rd, 2026 at 5:30 p.m. in the Earle Mountain Meeting Room at the Eastham Town Hall, 2500 State Highway, and by remote participation regarding Plan Number 24365064 dated February 2nd, 2026, from NSTAR Electric Company and EVERSOURCE Energy, who request permission to install one new handhole 251/H4-A and a 40-foot plus or minus of 1 to 3 inch conduit necessary to provide underground service to 140 Linda Lane. And this was published in the Provincetown Independent. So let's turn to who's on from EverSource?
Marissa?
Melissa?
Marissa.
Marissa, go ahead. Are you, okay, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Marissa Jackson with EverSource. So again, just to reiterate, we have an existing pole 251/4 that's at the island at the end of the cul-de-sac on Linda Lane. So from there, what we're proposing is the install of one handhole, and from there approximately 40 feet of 1 3-inch conduit, and this will provide our customer located at 140 Linda Lane with new underground service. So that being said, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
This is at the request of the property owner at 140 Linda Lane?
That is correct.
Right. Do we have any questions for Marissa? Is there anyone in the audience, the public, who would like to have anything to say at this point? Seeing no one, I will then close the public hearing. We'll have a discussion, or do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the, I guess, new handhold 251/H4-A and 40 feet plus or minus of 1 3-inch conduit. Second.
Do we have any discussion? Okay, we'll have a vote on the motion. It has to be by voice because somebody's, Bob, by roll call.
Yes.
Amy,
Aye.
Suzanne,
Yes.
and the chair is yes. 4-0, that is approved. Bob, I have one question on this for you. When are you expected to be back in Eastham?
The 31st, but Erica has my signature, I guess a stamp. So if that's doable, but I won't be back until the 31st.
That's fine.
31st, we're good? All right, because we need your signature. Okay.
That's fine.
On to the next public hearing. What did I just do with my papers? All right, we'll call a public hearing. This of the Select Board and Finance Committee in accordance with sections C6-5 and C6-2 subsection 3 of the Eastham Home Rule Charter. The Select Board and the Finance Committee will hold a public hearing on Monday, March 23rd, 2026 at 5:30 PM at the Eastham Town Hall, 2500 State Highway, Eastham, Massachusetts, and by remote participation on the proposed FY27 capital budget and operating budget covering all departments and the Eastham Elementary School. All amounts and items shown in the budget and operating budget are estimates and are subject to review, refinements, additions, and deletions at the annual town meeting where the plan is authorized. Copies of the proposed budget are available for inspection at the Eastham Town Hall, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and the town website at www.eastham-ma.gov. Okay, so the town budget, we will turn to our Assistant Town Manager and Finance Director, Rich Bienvenu.
Well, thank you. And as you said, Jerry, this budget presentation is on our financial planning page. We posted it there earlier today. And tomorrow we'll have a complete final budget book that has all kinds of details relating to the presentation tonight. And Erica here is going to share her screen so people at home can see what we're talking about. But thanks for having us. It's been a long process. As you know, we start in the summer, really, analyzing results from prior years, going over financial information with the Finance Committee so that they're informed as to the financial status of the town. And in the early fall, we do salary projections with our department heads. We start collective bargaining if it's a collective bargaining year, which it was this year, to set new pay rates for our staff. We go through a capital budget process middle of the fall and into winter. We present to the Finance Committee in December. And then in January, we have our preliminary budget information that we present to yourself and the Finance Committee to kind of lay the land of what it's looking like. We received the direction of a level services budget. And so that's what we're recommending and providing to the Finance Committee and the Select Board. That is represented in Articles 2A, which is our traditional, what we call our base budget, 2B, which is our Water Enterprise Fund, and this year 2C, which is funding for new collective bargaining agreements. So those three things combined represent our operating budget. And it's important to note that this, again, level services budget, there's no new staffing, no new programs or expanded services that have been added to that base budget. It requires funding of just over $47.1 million, which is a $1.4 million increase, which is a 3% increase over the prior year. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. The increases are not proportional between debt and the operating budget, and so that impacts what happens with our tax rate a little bit. So I'll explain that. The bottom line, though, with this budget, our estimate with a little bit of growth in the values of our properties in town, there'd be about a $465 increase in property taxes for the median valued home, which is about $780,000. That's about 8% increase. And it does require a Proposition 2.5 override of $2,790,000 for three things. And you know, I feel like we're repeating ourselves here, but for people that might just be tuning in, there's three things driving these needs: municipal services, transfer station costs, hauling and disposal of solid waste has skyrocketed as far as the cost to do those things. Pension assessments from the county retirement for which all our employees participate, and health insurance premiums. All those costs, those are the three main cost drivers of our budget that are increasing, the combination of them a little bit over 10%. And as you've been talking about, our revenue, property taxes, by law can increase about 3% per year. And so obviously, when you have a difference of 10% in cost, but your revenues can only go 3%, you've got two choices. You can make cuts or you can ask for an override. In addition to the municipal side of the budget, we have school services contributing about $460,000 of that override. And that's mainly, they have inflation just like we do. Obviously, they don't have a transfer station, but they do have special education costs, which they're mandated by law to provide. And the big driver there, a lot of that work they do in-house to the extent they can and have a shared program that operates out of Brewster. But the real expensive costs are those where we have private school placements that we have to transport children up to Sandwich, sometimes off Cape, depending on the programs and services needed. And then finally, our approach that we've had in place the prior 3 years was we do our collective bargaining, and when we bring the collective bargaining agreements to town meeting to be ratified, it's only fair that we let the town meeting know the cost of those agreements. And if you are inclined to support them, then we need you to support the cost to implement it. And this year, the cost of those agreements for the next 3 years over the 3% growth is $1,575,000. So we're only asking for the amount over, not for the full amount. That funds the agreements for 3 years. It gives us a lot of stability in staffing and the services we can provide. We can plan in these 3-year cycles instead of overreacting on a year-to-year basis on swings that may go up or down. It does allow us to continue to recruit staff and retain the staff that we have, which is super important as we went through the collective bargaining process this year. Pay competitiveness was a big issue. It does, with this staffing and the services that we have, allow us to make good progress, continued forward progress on our strategic plan and on the select board goals, and allows us to gives us some flexibility within our budget to address needs as they arise. And the most obvious one would be, responding to climate events and blizzards, things of that nature. We have a lot of extra costs this year associated with the cleanup effort related to the blizzard and overtime, but we're going to be okay. We have the flexibility within our budget to absorb these things. It will be impactful to us in free cash in the future year, but we're not going to be scrambling and we're not going to be asking for supplemental budgets at this town meeting just to close out this fiscal year. And then finally, I mentioned free cash. As you all know, I sound like a broken record, but we do heavily rely on free cash to fund our capital plan. In this budget is only $400,000 of tax levy, which we set up about 5 years ago to provide funding for what we call routine capital, police cars, duty trucks, departmental equipment that we know is going to be needs to be replaced and is operational in nature. That amount is no longer adequate to cover the annual needs of that. We had considered supplementing that, but sticking with the level service budget and not wanting to overdo it on an override, we elected not to. So that makes us rely more heavily on the free cash that we do generate. You can go to the next slide. A couple more. There you go. So next slide, Erica. Why is an override needed? Like I said, the operating budget only went up 3%. So you'd like to think that, well, then taxes should only go up 3%. But what happened is we had a drop in our debt service. The big drop was a result of the Eastham Elementary School bond being wrapped up last year. So we don't need to fund that this year. So that cost went down. However, since it was a debt exclusion, our ability to raise those taxes also went down. We don't get to keep debt exclusion. So when the debt goes away, the ability to raise those funds goes away. On the other hand, our operating budgets went up a little over 5%. So again, anytime we have a situation where budgets are increasing more than 3%, there's a need for an override. And then we're anticipating that property values are going to go up in the 3.5% range this year on average. And I say on average because, if you have a high-end property on the water, typically those are going up faster than properties on Route 6. Likewise, last year we had a situation where there's an anomaly that condos went up faster than single-family homes in values. So the 3.5% is just our estimate on average. It's very property specific. So, and as you know, almost all of our budget, 88% of our budget is funded by property taxes. As it goes up 3%, the other 12% is state and local, and we're lucky if that goes up 1 to 2% in a year. So we're overall a 3% or less increase in our revenue, and we don't have extra levy capacity that some towns carry. We operate pretty lean. So when you tell you that we need some money for X, that's the amount we need. We don't add to it and pad it and have building excess levy capacity. So we're not starting from a position of surplus and eating into that surplus. We're starting from what we need, and now we're asking for what we need to continue offering that. Most of the departmental expenses that we can manage are going up 2% or less. But as we just indicated, those three budget busters on the town side, educational costs for sped, and the collective bargaining are going up over 10%. So what's the tax impact? Next slide, Erica. These are very simple slides, and there's a lot more that can go into this. And again, if you're really interested in the details, our detailed budget book has a lot more details, but the chart here on the left indicates the increase on the components of the budget for what we're asking for. Our base budget is up about $108. The town override, the $755,000, adds $109 to that. The school needs add $88 to that. And then funding of the collective bargaining agreements adds $159 to that for the total of $465. So roughly speaking, operating budgets are up 5%, and there's about a 3.5% growth in property values. And so when you add those two together, you get to about the 8% increase that I mentioned.
Rich, that school override, that includes not just the elementary school, but also the Nauset region?
It does, yeah.
Thank you.
Rich, was there Bob here, was there any must have been resolution to what date the head counts in the schools were effective?
That's a good, yeah, that's a good question, because there was a realization, and I think perhaps a change this year in that we're using the October 1 date, but what's called the foundation enrollment number for the operating budget. But for capital, we have a split calculation. It's very explicit in the regional school agreement that for capital, it's based on actual counts of students in the high school, in the school seats. So foundation enrollment includes things like school choice and charter schools for kids that aren't necessarily going to Nauset, and that's a different percentage, a different allocation between the towns versus the kids that actually go just to one of the Nauset schools. And so you derive different percentages. And so our operating assessment is based on one enrollment number, and the capital is on a different one.
Okay, well, that's very more complex than I envisioned. I just wanted to make sure that it was resolved, because I know there was some question about it.
There was a question, and it has been resolved. And so I kind of gave you a long answer to that, but
no, that's okay. You're all over it. Thank you.
so how do we compare? Now, this is just the straight tax data. It doesn't contemplate lots of other factors. Brewster, for example, has about double the population as we do, which makes your tax base a little more diverse. We are about double of perhaps of what Truro has. So you have to take in, populations. You also take in incomes of the populations, but and a lot of other factors that we could add into, how do you compare? But this is just, we all share, all of our towns here on the Outer Cape kind of share the same cost base. We have the same issues. We have the same operations. We have similar infrastructure for the most part, and we share similar costs. So you can see that Eastham compares pretty favorably on an overall cost basis, not only locally, but also on a state average. Next slide. And then this just kind of shows a DOR chart statewide on the left. And then on the right, on the top, is 26, and below on the bottom in the blue is the prior fiscal year. And instead of looking at the average, we do like to consider what we look like on the median, meaning exactly 50% are higher and 50% of the properties are lower. Based on our incomes, per capita income here in Eastham for the latest available data, about 11% of people's income goes towards property tax, which is on the lower end of the spectrum. You can see all the different percentages of the number of 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts, the array of how much income they spend relative to property taxes. And finally, here's another chart on the next slide that shows more data. It includes population, includes the per capita income, includes the average bill. It also shows the residential class, which is another element I just want to put out there. So if someone's watching, they understand that when 88% of your budget is funded by property taxes, that can only go up 3%. And then you look at this chart and you see that 97% of our tax base is residential properties. The lowest on Cape Cod, or the highest, I should say, on Cape Cod, the lowest commercial and industrial. That means anything over 3% is going to be felt by residential taxpayers. And a lot of our part-timers come from the metro area, and a lot of those towns, especially a city like Cambridge, Somerville, on that metro area, Quincy, most of those cities and towns have a residential tax base of about 30 to 50%, meaning that upwards of 2/3 of their tax base is commercial. And so when they have a tax increase, your residential property owner is only feeling a small bit of the bite. And make it even more palatable for them. Typically, the commercial tax rates in those cities and towns are 2 to 3 times higher than the residential rate. So they have a big commercial base that makes it feel like the residents aren't paying as much, but it's all there. So next slide. What have we done to minimize the impacts? Well, as part of our process, started in the fall with the departments, with myself and Jackie and department heads. We go through very specific line item budgets with each department. And as you know, those line items are identified as to need. So, there's so many lines, I can't remember all of them, but the ones that come to mind are the police department, for example. When we have a budget for professional and technical expenses of a big amount of money, the common question is, well, what represents that money? And in our budget book is the detail of the lines underneath that indicating why we need that money. So for example, if we want our police officers to have tasers, which we do, a non-lethal form of protection, what's the lease to purchase those tasers, the operating lease on a year-to-year basis? That's disclosed in that budget, and that's kind of a need. And we differentiate that from provisions for items. So for example, in the police department budget, there's a line item for vehicle repair and maintenance. Now, we do know we're going to have tire rotations and oil changes. Those are pretty well identified. But what we don't know is something going to break down and need a repair? And so those cases aren't specifically identified, but we have what we call a provision for repairs based on history. How much have we typically spent on those things over the last 3 to 5 years? It doesn't mean last year we spent that much money. And last year, actually, FY25 was a very good year for us. We had lots of savings in lots of areas. But a lot of times that just comes down to luck. But when you look over the past 3 to 5 years, you see that the amount that is provided for things that may happen typically is about what we're budgeting. And we go through that and whittle that down internally. And before we bring that to the finance committee, who reviews it with each department head at their weekly meetings from January through March. And we do look for opportunities for savings and cost control. We do change operations. You might recall just last year, I believe, we really had a untenable situation with our dispatch, emergency medical dispatch, with one person on duty for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And we were likely going to have to add staff to keep that model up. In lieu of that, we partnered with the Barnstable County Sheriff's Office and got grants that funds the cost for them to do that on our behalf at a much lower overall cost. But for us, it's free for the next 3 years and reduced costs for the 2 after that. So that saved a lot of money. And part of that shifted, we did lose a grant that provided overtime for our dispatch. But instead of increasing the overtime to offset that grant, we kept overtime relatively stable. And the chief is working on alternative ways to cover shifts in the event that's needed, because it's not emergency medical dispatch anymore. It's just the police side of dispatch. So we can, now that we have adequate staffing in the police department, we can call an officer off the road if we need to. We can do other things that aren't as pressing as if we had the EMD. So that's an example of a change in operations. And another change in operations, a few years ago, we added a position which increased our operating budget. And we did this in a year. We were able to absorb it without an override and created a facilities position, a facilities foreman. And that position, I lost count after the first year, but he has saved us innumerable amounts of money, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars versus hiring outside vendors to have the work done. So that's an example of where we increased the budget, but what you're not seeing is the decrease in costs, especially on the capital budget, because we can do the work in-house. And not only do we get it done in-house cheaper, we know when we can get it done. It's timely. We don't rely on anybody to show up. And we know the quality of the product that we're getting. So again, changes in operations, ongoing cost control is an element of our budget development. Again, a lot of these things you don't see on a year-to-year basis. A lot of these things take time to evolve. But a good example of this is our health insurance program. We belong to the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group, a regional joint purchase group of all the towns in Cape Cod except for Bourne, which never belonged, and Sandwich, which withdrew a few years ago. But the rest of us are a pretty homogeneous group of population that we all use Cape Cod healthcare. And healthcare in Massachusetts is the most expensive in the country, and the United States is the most expensive in the world, and Cape Cod is the most expensive in the state. So we've got the most expensive healthcare right here in the world.
We're winners.
And the health group does a great job of controlling costs. So, for example, one of the things that you might not know on a day-to-day basis, we have a board representative, our HR director represents us in the participation of the group, and I attend as their treasurer, and I've been involved with the group for over 30 years. So this year, one of the huge cost drivers that we were very concerned about was GLP-1 drug coverage, and Blue Cross and Harvard Pilgrim removed that coverage from our plan design, offered us the opportunity to add it back by adding a rider, but that would have cost us about 10.5% more in our insurance premiums. And so instead of going for 18.5 or 19% increase in insurance premiums, we did not add the rider, and we are at an 8% increase in premium. So that's an example of things we do that are local to us, but also as a group across the county to help minimize costs. And I also want to point out, back to a collective bargaining for a second, health insurance is one of the top concerns for our employees, and that was a subject for every union of collective bargaining. And our approach was, we felt for us, we would need to get a better handle on these costs and perhaps have some future discussion about plan design. And so we figured out a way to get to agreement by not increasing our contribution percentage. We are at 65%, and that's the lowest in the area, and we're still at 65%, and we kind of offset that by giving them a little bit on the wage as far as our market adjustment that we're offering to be competitive with other towns in our region. So those are a couple areas of ongoing cost control. And then finally, reprioritization. We do reprioritize on small amounts between departments as we go, but the big thing here is under Article 4, I believe it is asking folks to reduce the CPA surcharge by 1.25%, an increase, and put that into the water infrastructure investment fund. That's one of the things we're doing to mitigate tax impacts because of operating budgets, but also because of capital projects for wastewater. So when we have the opportunity and we can identify ways to reprioritize money, we will ask for that shift, and that's one of the articles we're asking for. We also had over $1.5 million of additional requests this year, which are not included in the budget. We wanted to go up from 400 to 600,000 on our routine capital funded by the tax levy. We had several departmental requests where they wanted certain line items to go up higher than we allowed them or asked them to accept, and they're going to make do and accommodate the lower level of spending that versus what they requested. And we also had several proposed staffing and service enhancements, none of which have been included. However, we do have, which we'll get to in a second, an option for you to consider. And I just really want to emphasize that all these decisions, and I keep emphasizing this with the Finance Committee, and I'm really grateful and thankful for their insight and wisdom on a lot of this. They have kept a long-term financial perspective, which is not common in a lot of towns. A lot of towns go year to year and make snap decisions based on what's in front of them right then and there, not contemplating what that means for the next year or the year after. And I think we've done a really good job of maintaining that long-term perspective, which gives us a lot of stability and becomes more cost-effective over time. If the override doesn't pass, we'll have to have a special town meeting. This is our recommendation, and if the Select Board and the Finance Committee recommend it, this is what we'll go for within our warrant, and this is what we're asking for. If it doesn't pass at town meeting or at the ballot, we'll have to have a special town meeting, and we'll present a contingent budget that will represent the $2,790,000 of reductions, which could be represented or made up by a number of ways. But it's all comes down to foregoing something that we have in place for certain reasons. We have short-term rental tax that we have not added to the to fund the operating budget intentionally, because we've been putting that in our wastewater stabilization fund and want to be putting that to our wastewater debt service, which will start onboarding next year. We have $400,000 for tax levy going to our capital plan. We'd love to keep that in the budget. We'd like it to be 600,000, but if it comes between having that and paying for people, that's something we could forego. But then we start getting into budgets once we get past those two items, and you're talking about, what's the order of priority of things that you would do. And many towns would contemplate reducing or getting rid of altogether human service programs. We're very successful with the family support package and other human service programs that we provide, but those would be on the table. And then we'd get into departmental budgets and eventually into departmental staff. And the order of magnitude of $2.8 million that would affect every town department staffing wise. I mentioned that we had $1.5 million in supplemental requests. Next slide. There's a few of them that we thought, have a lot of merit and do have a lot of need. And so these would be considered the high priority items, and we're presenting them to both of you, the Finance Committee and Select Board, for your consideration to include in the warrant if you're inclined. This does give the townspeople the opportunity to say they do want these or do not want these items. So this is Article 2D, but in a table format, so people could vote yes on line item A, but no on line item D, or vice versa. And not only is it a town meeting vote, it would also be contingent upon an election ballot vote, a Prop 2.5 override, which would be written specifically for each of these questions. So a separate question for each of these items on the ballot.
Rich, I just want to make a comment that if all of those four are passed, as you say, there would be an additional $37 added to the $465 that we've talked about before.
That's correct.
So that would be $502 versus the $465 increase.
Right. Articles 3A and 3B, next slide, represent our capital improvement plan and our capital budget. The thing I want to point out, as you know, but I just want to, for the public, if they happen to watch this hearing, one of the things that we do that other towns are very envious of us, and we've been very successful with, is the funding of our capital improvement plan with these repair and replacement programs. This is where, for example, on facilities, we had an engineering study done on every town facility that told us what the repair and maintenance and component replacement costs over the next 20 years of all our facilities are going to be. And we straight line that so that every year we put in the amount of money. So at the end of the 20 years, we have that amount of money and we're able to stay up with our maintenance on an ongoing basis. We think that's a much more cost-effective way to be doing things. It keeps our assets in good shape and working order. It's good for community spirit. It's good for employee morale, and it's cheaper in the long run to keep these things repaired and not fall into disrepair. But you will also see in the capital improvement plan and in the capital budget, there's some instances, like at the senior center, where we're asking for their $65,000 annual maintenance, repair and maintenance program based on the engineering study. But we're also asking for a supplemental amount of money from free cash because we're so far behind on some facilities with a lot of deferred maintenance. And the senior center is one of those areas where there's a lot of pavement and sidewalks and accessibility issues that need to be resolved as a high priority item. So that's why you see supplemental items. We're so far behind that we got to catch up so that the 65,000 actually becomes a sufficient amount on a year-to-year basis. I do also want to point out that our capital plan, we try to capture as much as we can, and I think it's in there almost everything that is in town, every town facility or location. Whereas a lot of times you see a plan, it's just things that people think are on the table for the next few years. We like to show, the universe of what's in front of us. But we also like to show those things that are funded by grants. So it includes items, not just what we're asking for money for, but things that projects that we're working on. So we get a lot of grants from the NRCS program, which is a conservation program. Just the Cape Cod Conservation District just received substantial funding from the federal government, surprisingly, to continue that program. And we've got 4 active NRCS projects, which are going to do stormwater remediation and renovate and repair and replace and put in stormwater remediation on 4 town landings. And that's substantially going to be covered through those funds and by Seaport Council funds, we hope. So we're very active in seeking funds to do some of these capital projects. We also just received word that we received $250,000 from a Green Communities grant that's going to fund probably about 60 to 70% of the cost of a HVA system at the police department. We're on track to get $1 million grant to do HVAC at Town Hall the following year. The police and fire department are very successful, not only on grants for turnout gear, tasers, and different fire equipment, but they're also very active and receive a lot of private contributions for people that just want to help out public safety. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Friends of the COA and the library trustees provide a lot of funding that go into our operating budgets and capital budgets. So it's not just what you see that we're asking you for money at town meeting. All that being said, we do need, on average, if you look forward over the next 5 years, about $2 million in free cash annually. And so if we're not generating that, what happens is we defer some of those actions, some of those repairs, or we do borrowing than what we've done. Since I've been here, this is my 6th budget. I don't think we have borrowed any routine capital item in 6 years because we've been able to manage it within our capacity of our overall operating and budget and the result of free cash. And then finally, I don't know, maybe not quite finally, but we're getting to the end. 4A is the other budget items. Largely, these are funding of our reserves. And if you go to the next slide, Erica. You can see on the left there is our reserves and what we anticipate the balance of our reserves being. We have a pretty decent stabilization fund. We'd like it to be a little higher. And provide for within that an amount for stabilization for special education costs at the elementary school level. So we have a little bit more we'd like to go there. And our wastewater stabilization fund, I'd like to have a couple more million in there, which I think we will get because we're not utilizing our short-term rental receipts, and those will go in here so that when we commission a plant and we are not accepting any flow, but we've got all the costs of running a plant, we've got a way to mitigate the impact on our taxpayers. On the right represents contributions for things that really aren't capital or operating in nature. A lot of times these are parts of the strategic plan or select board goals. And you can see the first thing there is the Resident Taxpayer Assistance Fund, just another $50,000. We didn't utilize it much last year, but we want to build this fund up and we want to keep marketing and promoting this fund and making sure it's an available option for our residents. And a commitment to housing programs. We are suggesting and recommending that we reduce this Community Preservation Act, which theoretically could reduce funding for housing, but we're trying to make it up here a little bit. But also these funds aren't necessarily income or AGI restricted, and it gives us a little bit more flexibility when we develop housing programs. We've had a pretty successful lease to locals, and we'd like to continue that with this funding and explore what the new seasonal community regulations are out, which provides us to do permanent year-round deed restrictions in housing. And so we think that is a excellent way to pursue year-round home ownership opportunities as opposed to rental opportunities that also need to be developed. The other items are just one-time things, the biggest one there being PFAS remediation. We are continuing to monitor PFAS as an emerging issue, and we know that DEP is going to want us to do some monitoring. So these costs represents additional monitoring at our existing wells, as well as some new wells around the landfill and heading into Northeast Town. And this gives us the funding to do that. The good news is that the answer to resolving PFAS issues is to connect to the town water system, which will be complete by the summer. So to the extent we have any detections, we've got a solution ready to go. And we have because of our favorable financial position over here, we have a water betterment connection fund that can help taxpayers to connect to the water system if they need financial assistance.
Excuse me, Rich.
Excuse me, Rick.
Are these items in addition to the $2 million you mentioned on the prior slide, needing to fund certain capital expenditures? So this another, $470,000 is required just based on this slide?
Yes.
Okay.
Mary?
Rich, I just have a question on the library roof where you've got 50,000 for free cash under Article 4A. You've also got 100,000 under for free cash under 3B. Could you explain how that was determined?
Right. So the 100,000 under 3B represents, I'm taking you at your word. I don't recall if it's 100 off the top of my head, but if you say it probably is, Mary, but that represented the annual contribution based on the 20-year component and repair replacement plan for the library. That's the general. This 50,000 is going specifically to the leak roof issue and trying to resolve that.
Thank you.
Is it?
So that's the extent of my remarks. There's a lot more pages in here that have a lot more detail, but I'm not going to get into them. You've all heard the pitch before, I think, and you know our financial
Right.
management policies, and we are within our financial management policies, which gives us a conservative approach, hopefully generates free cash, gives us flexibility, and maintains stability on the tax rate over a multi-year approach. So.
Thank you. Before we go to questions, I have an anecdote for you that you might like, you and Jackie might really appreciate. In bringing brush from the disaster in my backyard to the transfer station this weekend, there was a person in front of me and he was blocking the way, so we went out and helped him. And he was from Concord originally. He's from Concord, Mass. And I said, well, it's good that we were able to do this. And he just said, listen, I'm from Concord. My taxes are 4 times what they are here, and I get 1/4 of the service. So I thought you might like that statement. I said, gee, I need you to do a video on that. But then he drove away, but whatever. Mary, I think you wanted to.
They lost the prison a few years ago. So
Pardon?
They lost the prison a few years ago. So.
Mary?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a little statement and sort of on behalf of the taxpayers before we get involved with voting. And I just want to make sure that everybody in town understands what we are dealing with here. Not that we haven't talked about some of that thus far tonight. But back in the spring, the Cape Cod Commission said that the Eastham had the lowest median income of any Cape Cod town. It was 72,700. 32% spend over 30% on housing. I'm just trying to give you a situation of what we're dealing with here when we get down to voting for a budget. The Eastham Elementary School in their packet last year for 185 students showed that 41% of them were economically disadvantaged. That's almost half the students in the school. And I think we're all aware, as we've discussed tonight, about the home insurance premiums. If any of you, we all have homes. If we are trying to get coverage for our homes, it's skyrocketing. The health insurance premiums, we're all aware of that. And now we're dealing with gas and oil prices. We've talked about the school, the food costs, and inflation. So I think we need to make sure that our budget covers essential expenses only and not expenses that might be considered discretionary.
Thank you, Mary. Excuse me. Any questions from the board here? Any further questions from the Finance Committee?
I have one question.
Oh, well, go ahead, Suzanne.
Rich, what year did Prop 2.5 pass? When is it from?
1980. It was 1980 or 81.
Yeah, okay, just to give some, it was a long time ago. So when we think about the fact that we are constrained by raising property taxes by 2.5% every year. It's a policy from
40 years ago.
40 years ago.
5.
And, you raise a good point. There's a report that the Mass Municipal Association has put out. I actually put a copy on our financial planning website right at the top, talking about the perfect fiscal storm, about the constraints of Prop 2.5. And if you read the Boston Globe over the weekend, or any number of papers, Patriot Ledger and South Coast, whatever that is in New Bedford, all the towns, almost every single town between Boston and Plymouth, including Plymouth, are contemplating overrides or had overrides last year. Some of them failed, and Duxbury, you would think they'd be very supportive. Had a failed override, laid off 27 teachers and a bunch of town staff, and now they've got an override request, much more than last year's, just to get back what they got rid of. And so it's not an easy answer, and nobody likes paying taxes. And I don't mean to sound crass, but it is the cost of doing business, and our choice is, do we want these services or not? I think we get a lot for what we have. We have a pretty small staff, but we're robust and we're effective. And, even slight changes to some of that staffing is going to have a ripple impact on what we can do.
Suzanne?
Oh, do you have a question?
Well,
Yeah, 2 questions.
go ahead, Peter.
Rich, on the other budget items table, the housing programs is by far the biggest number, 500,000. Just wondering if you could flesh that out a little bit, like who manages that? How did you come up with the 500,000 number rather than 400 or 300?
There wasn't any major scientific research project here. It was an amount of money that's available to us, and a high priority goal for the strategic plan and the select board, and coupled with the fact that we're reducing the funding for the CPA program by potentially, I forget the number, Peter, but several $100,000, plus a foregone match from the state of about $140,000. So it isn't a big amount. It is aggressive. Operationally, it's going to go for the lease to locals, a second year of a reduced subsidy, the people that joined last year, but encouraging more people. I think we got upwards of 8 year-round rentals this past year because of the lease to locals program.
First year.
And-
That's great.
What's that cost?
I think the highest subsidy we had for a 3-bedroom, I think was it 12,
15 or
15?
15, maybe?
15,000. It was a range. If you had a 1-bedroom, it was an amount.
So we had to put out 100,000 on that for that program?
Yes. And then, of course, the regulations for seasonal communities just got finalized, so we're going through those now. But as anticipated, there's provisions in there to have permanent year-round housing deed restrictions. And so programs across the country, Vail, Colorado, Truckee, California area, Lake Tahoe area, have had programs that they've actually bought deed restrictions for people to maintain year-round. And so again, we hear, especially if you read the paper, a lot of wealthy folks talking about Maurice's campground, where a lot of rental development is being considered. And they're saying that we want year-round home ownership opportunities. Well, you can't do everything, but using these deed restrictions might be an opportunity for us to address the home ownership issue. And if we're using unencumbered money, we can expand our population. We're not restricted to CPA money. We're restricted to 100% of AGI. This money is not restricted. It's whatever we can agree upon as a board, as a policy of how to approach that. So obviously we'd be talking with the Housing Trust, and Rachel Butler, our housing coordinator, and Paul Lag would be our community development director, would be heading that up.
Susan,
Oh, Susan, no, you go.
It's just a statement. It's a soapboxy
give it to
statement.
Amy.
Okay, I just wanted to bring up, Mary brought up, that people in town are stretched already quite a bit on their budgets, but I did want to bring up the RTE, and we talked about that. Well, I think the last couple meetings, and with this number, I believe you said about 500,000. If we do even the extra things, is about a 10% increase to the RTE would then cover that increase, so people's taxes wouldn't go up. with a 10% increase in the RT, which would bring it to what, 13% overall.
Which is pushing just the taxes to other folks in
Bob?
town.
Say it again, Bob. I don't think we heard you.
Moving the taxes.
Oh, you're muted now, Bob.
Like you're muted, Bob.
Yeah, I
Okay.
understand the RT implications, and that's a good number for the full timers in town. It just obviously pushes the numbers to the part timers.
Yes.
Yeah. Suzanne.
My soapboxy taxes statement. All right. So if you are like me, I think that taxes should go to support services that support the community. And I really enjoy our process. I think we have a really transparent process. We have an entire board that reviews this diligently, thoroughly, staff that really cares. A lot of these things are focused on providing rather direct services to the community. And I appreciate that at this level of government that we have that level of transparency and we have that level of like, well, what did you spend the money on? And you can find the line item and point to it, because at other levels of government, that's not necessarily the case. I would also like to express my appreciation for living in a community that consistently supports our schools. I know that they every year have a challenging budget process, and their budget process is not the same as municipal government, and it's definitely not the same as the private sector either. And that can be frustrating for people, but I still appreciate that that's what our communities invest their money in, is on our schools. And with that, the soapbox moment is that I appreciate that you added how much of our tax base is raised off of residential properties. And there's cost drivers such as special education and transportation that are shared throughout multiple communities where we have so few people and it is a residential tax base and the cost is so expensive. And it's such a surprise that I think the federal government should pay for it, and they should give money to the states to pay for it. And that is a policy decision that we're not talking about today, but I felt the need to say it anyway, because it really bothers me that we have the money as a nation to fund our schools and not have to talk about cutting staff in order to accommodate their budget. And then my other one, was there another one? I think it was the schools. I think it was the schools, and thanking people for continuing to support it. Oh, yes. The other one, health insurance, slightly soapboxy. I also appreciate that we have our own health insurance group, but it still exists within a for-profit medical system, and we can't control that. And we still have an obligation to provide healthcare to our employees and the people who work here. And so I also ask for your support in that, given existing in a system that we currently don't have control over for this budget. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Not to get too wonky, but you raised a couple of good points. So the report from the Mass Municipal Association kind of hits on the point of state funding of cities and towns has not kept up with for over 30 years with the rise, and more of the burden has shifted to the local community that used to be borne by the state, especially on Chapter 70 school support. Transportation aid for regional school districts was decreased this year. So they're not living up to their promises. So this report kind of indicates some of those things. So everything keeps getting down to the local level. And, I know we're the government, but we're not the federal government. We're not the state government. You can walk into town hall, you can talk to me, you can talk to Jackie, we can bring you over to the firefighters that are rolling out on the ambulance, or the police that are patrolling the streets. You're getting direct services for these things. As to health insurance, people may not realize this, but we have I think people realize we have a large elderly population on the Cape, but many of them on Medicare or Medicaid, and they need to be served through Cape Cod Hospital has an obligation to serve those people, and they get low reimbursements from the state and federal government for those services provided for Medicare and Medicaid patients. So who do you think makes up those costs to Cape Cod Hospital? The young, active young people on active plans pay a higher premium to cover the costs that aren't subsidized by the state or federal government through health insurance. So there's a lot of things we can do to advocate, and we will be working with our legislatures to make some of these improvements, but those are the things that take years, and I can't accommodate in a budget from one year to the next, but we can work on all these things.
Do we have any other questions or comments
I have
for
a question.
someone? Yeah, Bob?
Yeah, I have a question for Rich, and it's kind of the holy grail of the budget with the meaning free cash. So we talked about this just briefly, that there was about 2.5 million or something like that between two slides of free cash required for some of these capital and other expenditures. About how much free cash do we have in the budget overall?
Well, free cash this year was over $6 million. Of that $2 million by routine, we leave in reserve. We don't touch. It's part of our general fund reserve. So that means of that $6 million, only $4 million was actually generated this year. So because we carried it over from the prior year. So of that $4 million, and actually I was going to mention this with Suzanne's comment, one of my sayings that people around the state know me for is it's not what you budget, it's what you spend. And so our department heads are exceedingly good and exceedingly on top of controlling their spending. Just because they have the money doesn't mean they spend it. And so why do we generate significant amounts of free cash? Because they know that if they don't spend that money, that's going to go in to fund their capital plan to keep their equipment and their vehicles and their facilities in good shape. It's almost incentivizing them to be good stewards, which they would be anyway. But generally speaking, Bob, our financial management policy has me target our estimated receipts to be between 80 and 85% of actuals. This year, we're at about 85%, meaning that we are expecting to have 15%. If everything goes according to plan, we're expecting to have 15% savings on about $4 million of local receipts. So that's about $600,000 of savings. That's how one way we got that $4 million of free cash generated. The other way is the short-term rental receipts of about 1.5 million, which are not in the budget and get repurposed for the wastewater stabilization fund. If those are budgeted, those become free cash. So that's 1.5 million plus the 6 is $2.2 million. And the extra, in this case, a very good year of about $1.8 million of savings on appropriations. Typically, that's about $1 million. And actually, I got to back off on estimated receipts. We have more this past year. We had more than the 15% savings. We had a one-time significant local receipt because we issued $6 million of bonds and haven't spent the money, but partially over the year. So we had over $800,000 of interest income because we invested those proceeds and generated $800,000. So not only did we have the $600,000 of the expected savings, we had an extra $800,000. That's not reoccurring in the future because that money is now spent with the wastewater planning. And then normally we have about $1 million savings on our appropriations of about local appropriations of about $24 million. So we usually it's anywhere between 3 to 5% on our departmental budgets as unspent savings. And so I kind of went a long way there, Bob, but
no, that's exactly what I was looking for.
If you add those things up, that's how we got about the $4 million of free cash generated this past year. And if I had to guess, we're not going to have the $800,000 of interest this year. We're not going to have another good year of 5% savings on budget. That was kind of a fluke. So it'll be closer to 3. And we know we have a couple $100,000 that we're going to have to transfer at the end of the year. So it's going to come out of free cash essentially because of the storm response. So.
Gotcha. Well, my comment on this is that, I mean, I like the approach. You know, I like that methodology. I think it's keeps us from getting in trouble, as you've mentioned several times. I think the only bogey out there for a layman looking at this would be, from my perspective, is to say, you know, are we over budgeting on the free cash? And I don't necessarily think we are. It's just something that I'm sure you've considered. And what I think you're saying is it's likely or possible that your target would be $1 million of savings on this or carryover, if you will. But that's purely a guess, rather.
No, I wouldn't say it's purely a guess. And it's an educated guess for sure.
An educated guess. Anything could happen. Is the point. We could have another hurricane or something. So it's an educated guess. That's a better way of phrasing it.
Well,
So
it's also, we do have, as we go through the budget process, that's why I mentioned that we have provisions in our budget, provisions for things that might happen, like repairs and maintenance.
Mhm.
And we had an exceedingly good year last year where nothing broke and we didn't use any of those repair accounts. And I neglected to mention, we also appropriated last year $300,000 for the police department for new police officers that we didn't spend almost all of that because we didn't have them yet. We had to hire them up and bring them on board. So, we had some one-time circumstances that aren't going to reoccur. And so I think we'll find this year that free cash is going to be much tighter than it has been definitely for this past year. And I do want to comment on our financial planning page because you have great questions. Bob and others do as well. And I point them to our financial planning page because one of the first things that we start in the budget season is a year-end review of the prior year. And in that presentation, it indicates exactly how much free cash we got and why, and what were the biggest drivers of that. And so if anyone's interested in looking at, they can easily get to that and see. You'll see the 800,000 in interest. You'll see the 300,000 savings from police salaries, things like that.
Thanks, Rich.
All right. Any further questions or comments from the select board, from the finance committee, from the general public? Any questions or comments? All right. I would just want to say thank you, Rich. Thank you for the finance staff. Thank you for this department heads for helping put this together. And a special thank you to the finance committee who's had to meet many times this month and the month before going through this, and it really helps us that you do that. So thank you all for doing this. With that, I will close this public hearing, and we will go on to the agenda and discuss some of the articles that we have left. I will look to you, Mary, and it's up to the finance committee to decide. You can stay as in your called meeting and can discuss the budget, the budget, and then we will be going after that. We'll be discussing the zoning articles, and you can stay and have a joint meeting, and you can have your own votes, or you can do whatever you'd like and have your own meeting next Thursday to do whatever. So it's up to the finance committee whether you want to adjourn or not.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Peter.
I have a second.
Wow.
All in favor? It's 8, let me see, we're all here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9, 0, 9, 0. Yeah, we're
All right.
adjourned.
Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it. So now we'll go on to the agenda. Let's look at,
Are we going to vote?
we have the ability to go through and decide whether or not we want
we
to
should-
go through Article 2, which we did not vote on
Wait for,
any of Article 2 last time.
we should wait for Jamie, I guess.
2 and
We should wait
4.
for Jamie.
Wait for Jamie on that. All right. Well, we can,
I'm so ready to vote.
no, I understand. We can try. I don't know if let's see if I can pull something up sooner. How about the town clerk decision on town elections?
That's a
And
good
that
one.
is in our budget, in our articles. Find that.
So basically, this is an item left over from the town clerk's memo of last meeting where she asked or recommended you make certain decisions about the upcoming election.
Early voting and hours
That's right.
for the town election in May 20th, I think.
Right. So it says
Find it.
that she recommends to opt into early voting by mail, but not early voting in person. Absentee ballots will also be available. And then a reminder that, oh, yeah, so we need to vote.
We need,
We need to vote to do early voting by mail. So I move that we approve early voting by opt into early voting by mail for the town election on May 19th, 2026.
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion on allowing early voting by mail? None, I'll go for a vote. Bob,
Yes.
Amy,
Aye.
Suzanne,
Yes.
and Jerry's a yes. The next is she would like the annual town election times to be set for 8 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Excuse me, there's also, she wants you to opt out of early voting in person.
Oh, I make a motion to opt out of early in-person voting for the town election on May 19th.
Second.
Any discussion?
I will, if people do want to vote early, they can request an absentee ballot from the clerk's office.
Right, we also have, there's also early voting if they can, but the absentee ballots in Massachusetts are no cost. So you just ask for an absentee ballot and you get one. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll have a vote. Bob,
Yes.
Amy,
Aye.
Jamie? No, Amy's not here. Suzanne?
It's okay. Yes.
And
Just reading the names.
Jerry's a yes, they just went down the line. Okay, that's 4-0 on that. Now we need the times from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. for the May 19th annual town election.
I'll make a motion to set the time for the May 19th election from or the polls open from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Second?
Second.
Second from Bob. Any discussion? Vote, Bob,
Yes.
Amy,
Aye.
Suzanne,
Yes.
and Jerry's a yes. So we have that one done. We can look at Jackie, do you have anything on the
I don't, but I promised a robust town manager report for your April 3rd meeting.
okay, April 6th meeting.
Oh, is it April 6th?
April's 3rd's a Friday.
Sorry. Okay.
Right.
That's okay.
We're close.
We're good here. Well, I think you wanted to wait. What if we have Jamie?
She said she'll be, she said 15 or 20 minutes, but then she said she'd rush because I said we were moving along with the agenda. So, should we go through some of the budget articles?
we can let's
Which one?
talk on the budget.
I didn't keep track of which ones we
Article-
hadn't voted on.
Article 2A, which is the
Budget.
operating budgets.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have any further. We get 2A here and I will have that in my hand in a second.
I thought we were gonna vote on it for our recommendations.
Right.
Right, this is all just for to recommend what we will recommend.
Right.
The motion would be, we recommend Article 2A. We will vote up or down, whatever we want, that will be printed in the warrant.
Oh,
And
I'm
that
going to keep track
includes-
of what we voted last
Huh?
week, so we know what we have left.
I have to
Oh,
run
what
up
you
and get
want-
mine off
what-
my desk.
We have we have to vote on 2A, B, C, and D.
All the twos,
Okay.
yeah.
Twos, and
I think you did
All-
capital,
all the eights, all this, we didn't vote
Zoning,
on any
right. We
zoning.
didn't.
twos and eights.
How about CPA? Did we do all the CPAs?
Yes.
I think we did, yeah.
So I think we did everything but the twos and
We
the
did
eights.
2C.
Pardon?
We did 2C last time. I have.
Oh.
Steve
Yeah,
to
we
zero.
did do the water budget. Yes, we did. Okay. So 2A, B, two
I'm
B,
gonna run up and get my,
7, 8, not 7, used to be 7, 8. A to H.
Mid age.
We did everything else. So would you like to consider 2B? We might have done, we didn't do 2B, approve and fund the collective bargaining agreements. We've discussed those in that they're up, they're not low. That it's going to require $1.575 million override, but it keeps our staff. We're competitive with other towns where we don't want to lose staff to the other towns. It's a jump in the first year, and then the steps in year 2 and 3 are lower than they have been, so that if my memory's right from Rich, we're in the top third, and then we go down to in the middle at the end of the 3 years. And that's the cycle we've been going on, to have our 5 union agreements come at the same time. And to have them, we'll have to look to an override, but then have that and then hold the cash so that we do not have any override or any problems the next 2 years on that.
So, do we have any questions on the outstanding twos, or are we
Well,
waiting for Jamie to vote?
we're in for Jamie, but we can do the collective bargaining and then we can just keep on going. We have some questions on 2D. I think we didn't know what we wanted to do on 2D.
For the
A
enhancement.
sense of whether we want to have those 4 items before the town, which we didn't have a vote, but we had general agreement on that. But what do we do? Do we want to recommend to them, or just say these are over and above our
Jerry, that's what you didn't vote on is 2A.
2A and 2D?
Yeah.
Oh, we did the B and
Yeah.
C. Okay.
And I don't think we did I thought we did community president actually. If you don't have it, we'll do 7B again.
No, you did.
You did.
We did 7B?
Yeah.
I thought we did. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
That was a 5-0 as well. So,
So
I thought the finance committee was gonna vote tonight.
I thought they
I
were
thought
going to
they
vote
weren't-
tonight
they
too.
weren't-
Are you
didn't want,
going to vote?
We're having a meeting on Thursday, and I think people felt that they'd prefer to do everything on Thursday.
Oh, all of them
The
together.
ones that they haven't done.
finance
Okay.
committee has done quite a bit as well.
Okay. For the zoning articles, Paul just left. Did
Well,
we want,
Paul's here, Paul and Mary are here, we can,
did we want them to go over any of
there were some changes.
Yeah, you should go over the changes.
We will we'll have them
We could-
present those from what was initially
for the sake
presented.
of the public?
Yeah, and the planning board met last, what day was it? Wednesday, Tuesday?
Wednesday, last Wednesday.
Oh, I was
Planning
here
board met.
with the zoning task force members who are here also. And then you were going to all meet on Thursday. And I couldn't make it to your meeting. Did you discuss the planning board hearing at all? So I guess an update on that would be
It's in your
Okay.
packet.
It's in the
the memo, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
we can,
But there aren't any changes to,
Not to the sign code, not to the definitions. There there are some changes to zoning administration, residential lot intensity,
Jamie's here.
and storage of campers and recreational vehicles.
All right, we can,
Yeah, if you could,
What-
I guess we have the memo, but if you could go over point out those changes, that would be great.
Yeah, when I said Paul left, I meant he left the room. I don't think he left the building.
no,
What's going on tonight?
Elvis has left the building.
We're having a bit of disorganization tonight.
We are, we're,
Can we
gonna-
just do something?
we're gonna go. Mary.
Back to
you
the
ready
budget?
Go ahead. We're gonna talk about zoning, Article 8.
Right outside. I mean, alternatively, we could go back to the budget because Jamie's here and we could vote on the budget articles.
Well, we're gonna have to do Paul. So Paul's here, so let's go with zoning.
Jerry, I have a question first while we're getting prepared here. You said that the finance committee did not vote on the Article 7 articles, Article 7s.
Article 8.
Oh, you're talking about, I thought you were talking about Article 7 because we did vote on all the 7 articles.
Yeah, this 7 was what it used
Is a CPA. Yeah.
Okay, what Paul and or Mary, what changes since the last time we saw you?
Okay, thank you. So since
Can you
last,
pull the mic closer to you, Paul?
And is it?
Is it on?
it is better.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
So since the last select board meeting, we held the planning board public hearing. We got input from that. We took into account the feedback we got from this last meeting, and we also received back the initial review from town council. So based on that, we did put together a memo, and I'll just go through briefly the summary of the changes. So, and again, I think we have 10. So I guess the first thing I'll address is that there's some additional warrant articles. And this is intended to simplify things. The prohibited uses, the original warrant article, it has 3 components: the storage containers, fencing, and the formula business drive-through. We broke those into 3 separate articles so that they could be discussed separately at town, leading up to town meeting here in that town meeting. So that way, it'll just make it logistically easier at town meeting. So that's why there's a few extra, but there's no new content. So just going back to the beginning now, the article on setbacks, very basic change. We added a definition of site triangle. That's one of the new proposed setback requirements, and it's just for clarity of what a site triangle is. On the sign code, no substantive changes on that. Oh, and sorry, on setbacks, we removed the requirement for the street setback for the storage of campers and trailers and rec vehicles. That had actually already been decided long ago. It was just a typo that we hadn't removed the non-applicable. So the setbacks would no longer apply to those storage of those vehicles on the street side. The definitions section, no changes. The article discussing the zoning administration, we added or amended the text just simply to specify that the role of the zoning administrator would be designated specifically to the town planner. The reason for that is, as we went over the language, it still left it a bit open-ended that multiple staff people could be assigned to that, and it might lead to confusion or applicants kind of shopping around for the right answer they want and getting different answers. So we just simplified it so that it would be clarified in the bylaw. On the article regarding residential lot intensity, we added an effective date of May 5th, 2026. So this would, right now, we're kind of in limbo with, technically, these amendments are in play, retroactive to when the advertisements for the public hearing start. It's just kind of a quirk of state statute. So folks that are applying for projects between now and town meeting, they don't, they're in between two sets of regulations. So this simply clarifies that they can operate under the current until if and when it passes at town meeting. So we added that effective date in. We added in a definition of net floor area. This was a housekeeping thing. We just realized there was misaligned definitions. So that needed to go in, and those were the only two changes for that. The article on storage of campers and recreational vehicles, we added the word vehicle in the beginning, just to simply clarify that this allowance refers to vehicle trailers as opposed to other types of trailers. It was getting confusing with the other article. And we also changed the reference. So you'll recall that in that article, what it does is it removes the requirement to get a permit from the select board in order to store these vehicles. We remove that. It would be by right as long as the owner could meet some setbacks from the property line. This proposal includes a contingency that if for some reason there was a hardship and the property owner could not meet the setbacks, there's an option that they could go to the zoning board and get a special permit. We changed the reference under which that would happen. It was directing applicants to the site plan approval section of the bylaw, which is the planning board, and we moved it to section 4.4. It's a more logical place because if we're sending folks to the zoning board, this is the section that talks about other nonconformities. So it just makes more sense. There's really no change to the language. It's just where it would live in the bylaw. The proposal on inclusionary zoning, we added the term subdivision under applicability, so that this inclusionary zoning, it would be triggered by any project that creates 5 or more actual dwelling units. You're constructing actual dwelling units, or if you're creating a subdivision resulting in just the creation of the lots. And then we added in the subsequent section what that basically looks like. If you're just doing, that's a little bit different situation. If you're just creating lots and how the timing of when things would be required as far as actually executing the development of the property. So we added some language to clarify that based on town council's recommendations. On prohibited uses and again, so now we're into the last section, the prohibited uses. As I mentioned, we simply broke up the one warrant article into 3 so that they could each be taken separately. On fences, no substantive changes on fences. On the formula business and drive-throughs, no changes on that. And then on the storage containers, we added language under the subsection to allow the building official to issue a permit for temporary use of storage containers for incidental purposes, not related to a construction project. So what that means is currently in the bylaw, the building official has a capacity. If you're doing a construction project and you need temporary storage, you can get a temporary permit for a limited amount of time. It's contingent on the main building permit, if you will. We broke this, it's basically the same language, but we added the incidental purposes not related to construction projects, because it's logical that you might have something going on your property that's not a project happening that doesn't necessarily have a building permit. You might be refinishing your floors or doing whatever, and you might need to move all your stuff and keep it in the driveway in one of these storage trailers. So it just creates the capacity for a little bit of flexibility so that you could get a permit for these incidental circumstances. And I believe that was the only major change, no other substantive changes beyond that.
So can we go over what's in the warrant and where these new warrant articles are going to go? Or did you just split one up into three? Or,
Yeah, I'll bring up the table of contents if people
okay,
need to see it.
that'd be awesome, Rich.
So Paul is talking about Article 8C. So we could go any number of ways. Probably could just take the new 8, keep 8C, add a new 8D, a new 8E, and then the current D would just follow from there.
Okay, so the current D would be 8F. And 8C is,
I might have misspoke. 8C is the prohibited uses. So 8C would be prohibited uses,
Uses.
one thing.
8,
Fences.
Fences.
Then 8D would be prohibited uses, formula businesses, and 8E would be prohibited uses, storage containers. And then the current 8D would become 8F and so
Yeah.
on.
okay.
Well, will you help us when we have?
Yeah,
to
you wanna go
and
through it
make
again?
motions? I didn't write it down and it turned.
Or we could just add,
So.
or we could just add them all to the end.
Yeah, well, we could, but it makes sense to take that
Together.
8D,
C,
C,
C.
Eight-
And build
8C
off-
and make it 8C.
Right.
C is HC, 8D, 8E.
Yep.
And then the current D, E, F, G, H become F through J.
Yeah,
Bingo.
it's going to be okay, Suzanne.
No, yeah.
I'm looking for the, I don't even know what it was. It was about fences that I talked about at the, Planning board hearing. well, I know the prohibited uses, but this was another thing about fences, about screening and putting things in a trailer.
Right.
That was with the storage container.
No. No, it was in the, here we go. Campers, mobile home, boats or vehicle trailers, residential property. I think that's it. Yeah, it's the storage of campers, trailers. And prohibited uses. That's not storage containers. It's different. I can't remember which one that was. I don't have the.
I believe, Amy, it is related to the storage containers.
It's
in-
in that.
Right. And I can,
Oh, the screening is in that, yeah.
yeah, I can walk through that if you like.
But that doesn't have the shipping containers in it now. It's separate.
And where is
This
it
was
in
the-
There's two,
material?
the article that deals with the storage of the campers has two components to it.
Right.
That talk about two different sections of the bylaw. So the first part of that article
Takes it out of, yeah.
removes the requirement for the select board
Right.
permit, makes it a
by right.
permitted use subsequent to setbacks.
Mhm.
The second part talks about the situation where the storage trailer would be allowed for a trade service. So we're prohibiting, I know it's a little confusing. It's just the way that it's set up in the bylaw. We structured it this way. So in the,
That still have to be fenced then.
right. So the way it would read that we're prohibiting the use of storage containers on residential property. However, if you are a service trade, essentially your home occupation, service trade in the residential, you may have one storage trailer to store the equipment related to the service trade.
Right,
That
that storage
storage-
trailer, that's not a storage container. That's,
I'm sorry, I meant to
Yeah.
container. That's, we're trying to,
no, because there's no containers listed in this one. This one has the existing bylaw says no outdoor storage of service-related materials or equipment is permitted at the provider's premises unless concealed from view of neighbors by street, concealing a fence, and then the
Right.
new part is and or the use of storage trailers enclosing the said material and equipment.
yeah, that's a mistake on my part.
That the current,
It's supposed to read storage container. I'm trying to change because that was confusing. When we first initiated all this, we were doing storage trailer / containers because they're referred to both. So we're trying to limit the confusion, but when we're talking about these pieces of equipment, they're storage containers as opposed to a trailer. And that's why I added vehicle trailer in the other article to try to differentiate vehicle trailers versus storage containers. So what this article is focused on is the storage containers, the metal storage.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Box.
probably shouldn't say storage trailers then.
No,
No, I have to clean that up.
Okay.
And
But it's prohibiting them on residential property.
prohibited. You can only have one if you are a tradesperson.
And it has to be fenced in.
right. So the way
If
that
it's street facing, it can't be white vinyl. Just checking. It's a lot of regulation.
No,
for
just solid
municipalities.
panels, just solid panels. You could have a
Yeah.
picket.
So my issue with this is whatever it is, whether it's a trailer or a container, the current one says that it has to be concealed from view by a fence. And then you added and or use of storage container, I guess it should say, enclosing the materials. And then a maximum of one trailer used for storage permitted. But then it says that it has to be concealed by a fence. So above it says and or
right.
a fence and or trailer, but then it says if you use a trailer, it has to also have a
So-
fence.
I can explain why that is. Right now, and just as you're reading this, just keep in mind the underlined language is the new. Everything else that's not underlined is what is on the books now. So right now, if you're a service trade in the residential district and you want to keep equipment, it says that it's permitted on the premises unless concealed from view by a concealing fence. So there's no option. Right now, if you wanted to have one of these storage containers to conceal it, there's no option to allow that to happen. So I added that in. That's why it says and or, so you could have a fence and a storage container. It gives you another option to store the equipment. If you want to avail yourself of that option of the container, you need to screen it with a fence. So I'm trying to add options because right now, if someone today said, I need to store my equipment on my residential property. What can I do? The answer would be you need to put a fence up because it doesn't actually allow you to use a storage container.
But even if they use a storage container, this is saying you have to put a fence up.
That's correct. That's the way this is worded. Yes.
So it's really of no service. You still have to put up a fence. If I'm a tradesman and I have to put up a fence to cover my equipment, why am I going to buy a container and put up a fence?
I guess the way I would explain that is right now, if you had equipment you didn't want out in the rain,
Mhm.
you don't have the ability to put a container on your property. You put a fence up so that no one can see it from the road, but you don't have you can't put one of these containers. You can build.
But is that contingent on the other one passing that prohibits storage containers?
No, because we're allowing a trade service, regardless of what you're doing, regardless of the other one, you would be allowed to have one storage container for trades use.
Or proposed.
So
But we
it'd be, yes, you can have one for trade uses, but you would still have to screen it.
And you can't have a storage container for residential use as a shed. You have to just have a shed.
That's a separate one.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah, before we go there.
Okay, sorry. I'm just trying to
It's
make sure I understand and think.
So I understand there's a lot of moving parts to this. I guess one thing I'd say is we want to be careful about mixing and matching these things because if you I'll say for sake of argument, if you decide to not prohibit the storage containers for residential, then we should make the appropriate changes in this article we're talking about with the trades, because otherwise it would set up the situation where
Right.
I'm on a residential property, I'm using one of these containers just for my everyday stuff, and I can have as many as I want, but my next door neighbor who's running a trade service can only have one to store his commercial equipment. So we have to just, however we come down on this, I just want to make sure we have consistency with that.
Go ahead.
Why does it have to be a fence and not like screening with plants?
Like an option.
It could be. That's just the way the bylaw is written right now. It just says concealing fence. That's the way it was written originally.
And that is partly because it is in like the commercial part. Is that why?
Yeah, but it's still
reason.
environmentally, I would think it would be better to have
Tree.
trees, even if they're not native trees.
For the sake of not discussing things that would eventually be undone, I know that I kind of sound like a broken record, but I very much strongly believe that these containers should not be prohibited on residential property, and that tradesmen should not be required to fence them in. And I'm going to just say it again, that, I do believe we're a municipality, and as a municipality, it's our role to run a municipality without overreach and allow people to move forward on their personal property as they see fit. We have a health department in existence to deal with health concerns. We have a state that mandates things to our town when deemed necessary, to go beyond the reach of the state, beyond the reach of the health department, and to encroach on people's ability to make decisions on their personal property. To me, that is not why I sit on this board. And so it would be, if I were to make a motion at this point, it would be to remove that piece.
To not recommend.
To not recommend it, yeah.
Can I, we hadn't spoke, can I just let you know what the task force thinking was, or would you like to just?
Go ahead, Mary. I was going to ask a question to Jamie, but go ahead.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Well, we took Jamie, and I think and Amy as well testified last week. We took this very seriously. In fact, we were joking that containers we probably spent 4 or 5 meetings just on containers. And one of the things I think that we did feel that the unregulated use of them, while there's about a dozen or so in the town, if this were to proliferate, it would be problematic, we think, for the town. 2 things we did in the last 2 weeks, and I want to comment to several of our task force members. We looked at environmental issues, but I would say of all the things we looked at legal, we looked at building code, we looked at various other things. We did, and I feel we did more of a cursory look at the environmental impacts. Over the last couple of weeks, we've gone a deeper dive, and quite frankly, what we found regarding these trailers really alarmed us, in the sense that, yes, we do believe that there is a whole series of health regulations that would be necessitated and should be referred to the health department. But also even within the papers that we looked at, because of the environmental issues regarding the flooring and the containers, et cetera, wherever they have been emplaced, they are being recommended to be on platforms, to be on foundations, not to be on the ground. So we are now moving into a structure. And even under our current bylaw, and the 2 building commissioners, Justin and now Basil, have both looked at these things, and the places where they've been permitted, they've been deemed as structures under the building code, and therefore subject to site coverage and setback regulations. So we're getting into an industrial piece of equipment that is presenting significant environmental issues, and it also has building code issues. And I don't know if Martin, would you want to? Martin has done a lot of analysis of this, and I just wanted him.
Hi, I'm Martin Ridge. I'm the Vice Chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals, as well as a member of the Zoning Task Force. And to address these, we did speak about storage trailers, containers, at 3 or 4 of our meetings. And at each meeting we had more and more support, thinking that these are in the wrong place in residential neighborhoods. And in fact, not only were we speaking about the environmental issues, but about the safety issues. And Jamie, you brought up the point about the state's not mandating what we do with these. However, the state building code doesn't address these storage containers, and they're being used as, we said, a structure on the site. It's easy to find cases of where people get locked into them because they don't have, how easy it is for children to get stuck in them or kids to be playing around them. I think there's an expectation as well for a residential neighborhood that this is a piece of excess industrial equipment. And what's the next piece of that excess industrial equipment, that we're going to use? If somebody wants to take an old school bus or another piece of equipment and put it up on blocks and say, that's my shed,
I think that would be pretty cool.
Right,
That's an opinion.
it would look cool. That's an opinion.
Right.
But it's also the idea that there's overreach. When we look at the trailers, for instance, right now, campers, the current rule is that every camper has to be approved by this board. And we're simplifying that. So we're coming back and saying the town was overreaching doing that. We're going to make it by right. And, so I think we've been very conscious of the fact that we live in a rural community and there's people that have to make a living at 2 or 3 different sources of income. And a lot of that requires them to have a home business or whatever or whatnot. And I think that we've made the accommodation for people that have a realistic home business. But I feel that allowing these trailers to go without permits in residential areas other than because they're more convenient or more, it's a quick solution as opposed to, and they're not necessarily cheaper, by the way, than, as we've done research on how much it costs to get a shed installed in your house. It's about the same, depends on what you're doing, but we don't know where these have been. We don't know what type of chemicals are in them. I recall only 2 or 3 years ago, the planning board spent the better part of a year debating about whether we should have storage containers built at Willie's. And we were concerned about, well, what's going to be stored in them? How's it going to affect the groundwater? And that was several articles written in the newspaper about that. And now here we are saying, well, you can put these anywhere in town and we don't know what's stored in them. And they could be on top of close to our wells. They could be on top of our aquifers. And we don't know what they were transporting. Were they transporting fertilizer or pesticides for the past 20 years before they became no longer useful? And it's just not the greatest, we're sort of ahead of ourselves. This is a piece of industrial equipment that's become excess. And that's a bit of our feedback on it. And I can say that I've been approached by at least a few people in town, and this really resonated with them. They said, I never really thought about that, but now everywhere I drive, I start to see them. And there's at least a dozen of them in town. And, I'm not sure which ones are on home businesses or home occupations, which ones aren't. And, I know when we get into screening them, I don't know who's whether we want to screen them or not, but having no regulations is just not a path that is going to have a good outcome 4 or 5 years from now. We're going to wonder, why we didn't address it before it became a problem? There's only a handful of them now. Why wait till there's dozens a few years from now and until we start getting more complaints? So,
All right, thank you.
I think Amy had
One question just to follow up on Jamie's last statement, just to understand, if this were removed, this 8E were removed, what does that leave under our current zoning bylaws? Could I put more than one storage? Could I put a storage container on my lot? Could I put more than one? Could I put
Or
others?
sheds.
I mean, what's left if this is
Site
removed?
It would be guided by setbacks and by site coverage. So if you didn't have, there's a lot across the street that's completely empty and it has 3 or 4 on them. So they're not violating site coverage and they're pretty much in the center. So they're probably meeting setbacks.
A setback, okay, so it's only setback and coverage.
And site
There's
coverage.
no limit on the number.
And the only other point is there need to be some enforcement because several of them have been permitted, but many have just shown up on site. So if there is decision that they all should be permitted as sheds, then the town would have to go back and look at probably, half a dozen or more of them that need permits.
And would it be the same for if I ran a trade and I could if we remove this, could I put as many, quite a few other storage containers as well? Would I be required to put fencing up or anything of just removing this one that Jamie had said? That's all I'm asking. Would I have to do that? I'm trying to,
Jerry, I
I'm
think
trying to think, what's the extent? Where are we here? If this goes, if it's here, what are we adding? And if we take it away, what's left? Amy, you wanted to say?
Well, I just want to, it's like Jamie keeps saying, site coverage. So right now, you could build a couple sheds on your property if you meet the setbacks and site coverage. Same thing that they would fall under.
But they
If-
don't
if we didn't
currently,
do this.
but they don't currently fall under.
Right,
it.
but if we didn't do this, that's what they
That's
would fall under,
But
the
they-
building
We
department.
could just as easily have a bylaw that adds them as a structure.
Right. This really started because this phenomenon of people are using them more as sheds. So we don't have a definition of what a shed is. So it's just, how do we want to categorize these? If as a town, we want to say that this is a storage, and it's an accessory structure, a shed, then we would treat them as structures subject to setback, just like any typical garden shed, and subject to site coverage. There's a 200 square foot allowance, but after that, so if you had multiple of these, they would start to count towards your site coverage. So that would be the controlling factor as to how many, but it really just started with their containers. They're not really a structure, but they can be treated like one. So that was really where this whole thing started, was how do we deal with them? It's not really addressed in the bylaw, and this was
Or the state building code.
But you could also add, like say you add in a bylaw that they counted as sheds. You could say what they had to sit on, whether it be gravel or a pad or piers. You could say they can't have wooden floors, which are probably the main things that hold any contaminants. Otherwise, they're just steel. You could put stipulations on like that in a bylaw that allowed them as a shed, regarding site, the same restrictions that a shed has as far as setbacks and site coverage and all that.
you could do that. That could become problematic if you're trying to say what kind of material the flooring has to be made out of. Because the issue that's happening is the surplus containers are what are proliferating.
Right.
So it might complicate it if you say you're allowed, in other words, I think what I'm hearing is like, if you're buying one of these brand new pods or Connex boxes, brand new, and it's, where it's come from, it's manufactured. I mean, there's a relative safety in that there's no harmful contaminants in there. It's brand new, as opposed to a repurposed one, which could have come from anywhere at any time. We'd have to have some language about what's allowed and what's prohibited, and then the enforcement of that or the inspection of that. So, anything can be done with enough language and wording in a bylaw, but I think we have to figure out what is the intent of the board. You want to allow them
I think I would
or
rather-
not, or
I'm interested in having them be an accessory structure on a property than completely prohibiting them as
An option.
an option for residential use,
At least one of them.
or at least one of them. Yeah,
So the question I have do we have time to do this? Let's say, for example, if we want to do this, do we have time before May 6th to do this? Before April?
No, it would be removed and it would be on the next warrant.
No,
no.
It would have to be next year.
if the
we might be having a special in June. We
if
don't-
the board does not
Yeah.
if the board does not want to prohibit the use of these containers, then we just wouldn't move forward with this article. And then the fallback position is that we treat them as structures now. in the absence of any regulations, we have been trying to treat them as structures where someone has actually come forth. They said, sometimes they just appear because again, they're not, what are they? Are they buildings? Are they a structure? Are they a piece of equipment? In the limited cases where someone has actually said, I'm going to use this as a shed, can I do it? We've said, meet the setbacks, and we've treated them like a structure. So it would be, I think the simplest thing would be to pull this article and things stay as is.
Well,
They're not prohibited, then they're not, there's no regulation on them. We treat them all back in the building code as structures.
Setbacks.
but if we left it in, if we left the article in, and the recommendation here could be whatever it is, it's up to the people of Eastham to decide whether they want it or don't want it. If we leave it in.
Right. Well,
And we
that's
can
true.
have a recommendation that's 0.5, 5.0, which it probably wouldn't be, but and whatever. So that's
I just,
that I think.
You can also vote
I
not
think-
to place it,
I think
to move.
that's the question. Let's look at just
Yeah.
8.
I would move that it,
That's the question, whether you keep it in, let the people decide, or pull it out, because
I would move to pull it out because I think it's extremely confusing. I think it's going to make town meeting a nightmare. I think the residents are going to be confused by it. We're confused by it, and there's 5 of us. I think that it is not ready. I think it should be pulled personally. I think it would be very confusing at town meeting.
And that's the shipping, the third one, the shipping. container.
Yes, I think the removal of that will clarify a lot of other things, and simplify them.
Yeah, I'd like to chime in. I think
Yeah,
it is,
Bob.
it is very confusing, and just trying to keep up with, if thens was a little challenging.
It's challenging.
But I also worry that if we don't do something, we've got this environmental problem that we're kind of ignoring.
But I'm going to pause, Bob, because I don't think it's right to call it environmental problem by
Let-
any means. It's,
let Bob finish.
but it's
Go ahead.
incorrect.
Wait, hold on.
One article.
Let Bob finish. Then you.
I'm sorry, but it's not you.
Go ahead,
It's just
Bob.
that I think
Hold
it's being
on. Jamie,
misconstrued.
Bob, go ahead.
Well, I just think that, I looked at a little bit of this on ChatGPT. I'm sure we've all done a little bit of research on this. And, the metals in the container, there's disintegration of this material. And obviously we don't know anything about what's been in these things. And I was on the zoning board when we had to push back on that whole situation in Willie's with the storage units and not knowing what had been in them, and just trying to really protect the citizens of the town.
No.
So that's my only angle on this is, do we have an environmental situation that we are turning away from to keep this simple for ourselves right now?
In my opinion, I think that looking up ChatGPT is more of an environmental hazard than one of these containers. And I think that because we don't have solid data, we don't have regulation from the state, we're not in a position to decide that. But Amy also.
Oh, go ahead, Jackie.
I just wanted to, the storage container village issue, the storage containers that are a commercial business, there is no indication, at least from my viewing of that whole thing with the Board of Health, that it is the container that causes the problem. It's the fact that you have unrestricted use to a whole host of containers, a whole little village of containers, and you have no idea what's in any of those containers, and they're all in the same place. So it's the intensity of use and what's in them, and that there's no, they're private, so there's no management of what's in them that the town can have. So it is a different issue. I mean, you can put toxic chemicals in your shed that was built 20 years ago and has pressure treated wood with arsenic in it too. So I don't know. I agree with Jamie. I think if we want to talk about environmental concerns, then we ought to have a joint meeting with the Board of Health, or have Hillary research it for us, or do something a little bit more deep diving than one article that says that they're, not great for the environment.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yes. So if
we need to consider that and not just, sweep it under the rug. I mean, I think we probably need a bit more research on some of this.
Yeah.
But I don't want to, I think pulling it is the smart move right now. But again, I don't want to just ignore it. I think we need to understand if and what there are any, polluting aspects to all this. That's all.
That's fair.
Right.
I think that's fair.
Hey,
If I want
I think,
Yeah, I just had
think,
one
Amy?
thing about, your comment about Willie's and, being concerned, like Jackie said, about what's in them. We don't know what people were putting in those.
Right.
But really, it's, I don't know how many she was trying to get, 50, 100, 200 units.
It's a
So it's an
it's a
intensity
different
issue.
thing.
That's,
Yeah.
think of that many garages. Somebody's not going to put that many on one piece of property. It's a whole different animal,
And maybe
I
And
agree.
it's in
I
our
agree.
wellhead protection area.
No, I totally agree that the volume of this makes it
I would,
a completely different issue. But the facts of what really happens to the environment based on these things, we really don't know.
and that's a good reason why I would tend to say, let's not allow them. And if you want to allow them in a few years, when you decide that, oh, there's a real good marketplace for these, they're not addressed in a state building code. They're very similar to a commercial freezer, right? When someone's doing, in a commercial freezer has strict codes on how it has to be used, that when you're inside of it, you can get an emergency exit. There's a way of getting out of it. There's no way of getting out of these. They're not built for a residential environment. They're built for an industrial environment. If kids are playing in them, or someone shuts them, or the wind blows it shut and somebody's inside of it, there's no safety mechanism here because it's not in the state building code. It doesn't address them. It never crossed their mind that they would have to put these in the state building code. So to me, I would say ban them right away now. And if you don't want, I know, don't smirk, Amy. It's a serious issue because
I just think it's
written
extreme.
down. And if someone makes a case that I can't run my life without them, then try to bring them back. You don't say, let's not do anything. Well, we know they're proliferating. And in 4 or 5 years from now, then we'll ban them when it's going to impact a lot more people that invested something. And, they spend $600 for that instead of $700 for a shed. And then we're going to make them illegal 2 years from now. That doesn't make sense to me.
Suzanne.
I have some interest in the environmental impacts of these and differentiating between the risk as using it as a home or a living space and the risk of it as it being a storage space. And I didn't have time to go through all of the references, but they're like, are shipping container homes dangerous to live in? And so we're not talking about people being able to take a shipping container and live in them. We're talking about them at the shed. And I understand that I feel like the town would like, and the boards that handle these things would like clarity on what to do with it. And I would like to see it as an auxiliary structure. However, you more want to work that in than just flat out prohibiting them. We had one and it was dry and it was mouse proof and I could barely open that door by myself. Like to get in it, like it was rough to open and it was heavy. And I mean, I could open and close it, but it wasn't going to like latch. It's not gonna latch on its own. So we just got really hung up on this. So anyway, I make a motion to remove 8E
Sorry to interrupt you,
from the
but
warrant.
Well,
there's,
get to you, sec. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, okay, Paul.
sorry, before you made the motion, I just wanted to make sure the moving parts of this. You may not necessarily want to pull the whole article because there's different pieces, and I can walk through what to do if the board's desire is to not prohibit the storage containers.
Yeah.
I recommend.
Okay, well, that would
But what would we?
walk through it, then we can always amend the motion.
So the first part of this article talks about the permitted uses, being able to store the campers, wrecked vehicles by right.
The other article she wanted to pull.
Yeah.
No, but this,
He's
I know,
going
but
through
then we
the-
need to go back to that one and look at, I think, what would need to get pulled out of that.
So so what you're saying, Paul, is that we are going to,
Impact.
if we vote to pull prohibited uses, storage containers, we need to go back and amend the interdependencies in the other ones?
Yeah, sorry, I got ahead of myself, sorry.
Oh, okay,
Right. No.
that's okay. So, and it's not that I don't want to address the storage containers, I just would like more time to review it, talk about it, and I don't want to flat out prohibit it at
Right.
this time. So
Okay.
if we could,
Paul, did you have any?
No, sorry, I was
Oh,
ahead of myself. I was thinking of the other
Okay.
articles.
So that's the 6211.
Maybe it is, I make a motion to postpone and not place this article. So
Which
that,
we think is 8E.
It's 8E.
Yeah, it's the one that
That one.
deals with section 6.2.1.1.
6.2.1.1.
so that way it's postponed, it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
I'd like to,
That's where the motion is.
wait,
Yes,
Wait.
postpone and not,
That's
not put forward.
Right, we're trying to find out exactly what is. The problem, one of the problems is it's article question mark.
It's Article 8E.
Yeah, but I mean, in our packet, there's no
Right.
number on it.
That's why I gave.
What happens? What's there for the service trade person in section 2.1.3.3? I mean, it goes to service trade on these storages and points to another one. I just want to see what happens if we don't put this on the warrant.
We have to change 8C.
You could remove the and/or. It's just the same thing. If they have open equipment, the current bylaw says they fence it. But if you pull containers, I think theoretically they could just treat those as a shed.
Yeah.
That's what would happen. Like any
And-
other resident, they'd be treated as a shed.
could we leave it as limiting it to one, as it was listed in the,
No, I
Other-
wouldn't do that right now. I would wait to
No,
do that.
that was what I was mentioning
Yeah.
earlier, is
Okay.
that then you would have a mismatch with
Mismatch,
a
right.
tradesperson
Tradesman
would only be
and
able to
resident
have one.
Right.
right.
So I think
Okay.
like Mary said, after and or the use of storage trailers, you just really put a period there.
Okay, so,
We're-
but first, we had a motion, had a second.
Yep.
Before we
Well,
go
no,
back
we just
to
wanted
the
to
other
talk
ones,
about the
we
impacts.
want the impacts.
We're
That's all.
discussing.
That's all.
We
Yeah,
got it.
I'd like to chime in on this.
We're discussing is whether we're going to,
Right,
what our vote is going to be, yes on the motion or no. Bob, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think the idea of postponing is exactly what I was throwing out as well, provided that in some period of time, we ask the task force to come back or with some research, something that we can hang our hats on with respect to anything dangerous with this type of shed. And at some point, if we come back and we want to label it as a shed or treat it like a shed, then I would wonder if we would want to put some other criteria around it. But that's not for this discussion, I think.
Right.
I
No, I agree.
just want to postpone, and I want to have, in the meantime, some research that the task force would be able to provide to us on some of the negatives about this, so that we would have something to hang our hats on should we decide to prohibit the use.
Right, thank.
Just one other quick thing. Somebody asked, I believe on the planning board asked about these and said, what are other towns doing? But nobody else has prohibited these that you could find.
Yeah, normally we're pretty proud of being progressive in this town.
Oh, I
Trying to get out
agree.
ahead of something
Well,
we think
usually
might be
we're
a
the
problem in the
last to
future.
allow things, not the first to prohibit them.
No, but we're trying to protect people's safety.
Oh, I
Yeah.
I completely
Of what we
understand
think
that.
we've done.
I don't doubt that.
And we're not even
And
talking
I
about
wasn't
the aesthetic.
smirking at what,
Hold on.
So I understand. I mean, that's.
Yeah.
Let's, time out. I still don't have clear in my mind. If we don't put this on the warrant, we postpone it, it's not on the warrant on May 6th. I think it's May 6th.
it's
No,
4th,
it's not, it's May 3rd.
May 4th.
May 4th? May
May
6th.
4th be
The
with you.
It doesn't matter,
Boy,
Jerry.
whatever it is, it's not going to be on the 2026 town meeting warrant. What do I have left? if I am running a service, if I'm a
Tradesman.
residential trade, what can I do in my residential property vis-a-vis storage containers? With right up with this is not, boom, current stuff. What can I do?
I think that you could use a storage trailer as for your service, to store your service trade equipment, just as you would, anyone else would use it to store anything else on a residential property,
Can I have
Subject
two?
to site.
Yes.
subject to setbacks. and site-
Can I have
Setback
two?
and site coverage.
So I have seven. Can I have three?
Currently.
If I meet the setbacks.
You could have 3 sheds
Now, hold on a
also.
second. If I am just Jerry Siricel, resident of Eastham, what can I do if we pull this off? What can I do with storage containers on my property? Can I have one if it meets the setback? Can I have
Same.
two? Can I have three? Can I have four?
It
You can
depends.
have,
Do
mul-
they fit?
you could have multiple. So if you were to pull that article, the simplest thing is if you were to pull that article, think of storage containers as synonymous with sheds. It's as synonymous as with your typical garden shed. You can have multiple of them. The controlling factor would be your setbacks
And your
and your site coverage. So you could have multiple up to the
sheds, I
point
could have
where,
multiple any of them.
yes,
And there
like
is-
a garden shed, you could have multiple of them, however many you want, up until the point where you're coming up against the cap of your overall site coverage. So the total of your total roofed area, your house, your barn, your garage, and then however many containers or sheds you have, that would be the ultimate cap
And
on
would,
how many.
would the coverage count if I put a ladder and stuck storage container on top of a storage container?
It wouldn't hit the site.
No, no.
We don't, that,
How does
Not
that,
that.
how does that count? Look, I'm the lawyer trying to figure out what
No,
can
I
I
understand,
do
yeah.
here. So I'm gonna
so,
stack them because they're stacked.
so the way,
On a ship, they're stacked. So I just want to know, Jerry's gonna stack them. How many can is there
it's the net floor
is
area.
is that floor area double for site coverage or no?
Yes, just like the way we do site coverage is the net floor area, so your
So
total
if
floor.
if it's a 10 by 20, then so I really have it's 10 by 40. I mean, I have, if I stack them up.
Right.
Okay, that's what I'm just trying to
No, I-
figure out what
I understand.
happens afterwards because we're postponing this, which is a signal to anyone for 1 year. You can do what you want because we're gonna
Here,
look. at-
Jerry, I think
Do what you want.
I think we should call the vote. I'm calling the
Can
vote.
No,
can
honest-
I add one thing too? I mean, I think your line of questioning sort of also opens the issue, and you could just look at the site across the street. If you had a vacant piece of land, you could have a lot of
Yeah,
containers,
okay, I understand.
and that
I
would be.
was just trying to see
scenario.
what we have, because normally when we pass anything later, what's there is done. Okay,
Just-
I don't have any more to ask. Any other discussion from anyone?
My only question is, what does postponing mean?
So what we're saying is we're moving to
We're in the
remove
middle of
Yeah.
it.
this and revisit it at our next warrant.
Right, it's a.
Not sure what it is that we're supposed to research in next year.
No, I think
Brought
we
the
will do
environmental
that
stuff.
after this meeting. That's not
Well,
going
that's-
to be decided
that's what
right
I-
now.
Stop.
Yeah, I'd like to know what,
Any further discussion
No.
on the board?
well, I have one more,
Go ahead, Bob.
and that's it. If we're postponing, and the reason I'm asking for postponing is to absolutely double check and research the safety of these types of things. Mary or Marty, do you guys believe that you already have provided that information to us? So in other words, there's nothing left to research? Because that's what I'm hearing from Martin.
I would say that what I'm hearing is I think there was a lot of sources to the environmental issues that were raised, but I think we could, and we were sending that to the Board of Health anyways, just as an FYI, so we could collaborate with them to confirm that. I think we'd also have to, if in fact there were issues, you could make a distinction between containers that have been used in these industrial fashion versus new containers, which may not have those issues. And if you want to prohibit the industrial use, reused ones, I mean, hypothetically, and go with new containers, then I think, all of the issues of whether if they're structures, do they need to be off the ground? Are there height limitations? Whatever you would think about when we consider structures, we would have to go through an analysis of, okay, what would we think about beyond site coverage and setbacks as these are a structure? We never thought about they are stackable. What happens if you choose to stack them? So, that may not ever happen, but, I think we'd have to kick the tires on those.
Yeah,
Those issues.
what happens to them under wind load? They're not covered by the state building code for
Yeah,
shear
okay,
force, for wind and
thank
so
you.
forth.
Well, any further discussion on the board?
No.
Okay, we'll go to a vote. This is a motion to not place what we currently call 8E on the warrant, which would mean we would then renumber the other one, re-letter the other ones that follow behind it. So, Bob,
I will vote to pull that from the warrant or postpone with the caveats we've discussed.
Amy,
Aye.
Aye.
Suzanne,
Yes.
and I'm a no. Okay. Now we can go, so that's not on the warrant. So now let's go to look at the zoning provisions from 8A is to amend the zoning bylaw for administration. B is for residential lot intensity. C is for prohibited uses. And then D would be the form-based code changes. And then E would become the sign code. F would be the inclusionary zoning. G would be setbacks, and H would be definitions, and I would be campers and trailers storage. Now, do we have, I'm willing to, we can go each one separately. We can, if you want to, group them all in one, or whatever. I'll just wait for a motion from someone.
Can we? I'm happy to make motions if somebody else is going to keep track of the number and the letter.
We have Erica here for that.
Mr. Chair, I
Paul.
think
Oh, you want-
now that you've pulled that article,
We need to go back and,
we need to make some adjustments to 8I,
okay.
Eight,
campers and trailers, so that it will,
that would
Fine with what
be
the board-
storage of campers.
yes.
So would a motion,
Okay, so we need a motion to change, we want to change that one. Let's do that.
And Jerry, if I might, I think what I
Yeah, you can make.
thought I said before,
Was
I'm just going to
correct.
clarify before I make the motion, is if we concealing in number 3, concealed from neighbors view by concealing fence and or the use of storage trailers, period. And then get rid of the rest of it, the rest of that paragraph.
Can you show, what page is it?
They're not numbered.
Number 30.
Page 30 in our packet.
It's 30 in the packet.
Oh,
It
okay.
comes down on the bottom of the code. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks.
so are you trying, let me look at
So
it.
number 3, right now it says no outdoor storage of service-related materials or equipment is permitted on the provider's premises unless concealed from view of neighbors and street by a concealing fence, and that's the current language. What would be added would be and or the use of storage containers,
Period.
period.
So are you looking to just strike all of the new language?
No, not all the new language. Put a period after and or the use of storage containers.
Containers,
This
period,
period.
and then you would strike the rest.
Strike the rest. I guess you could say enclosing said materials and equipment. That's the existing language. And then all that new underlined, which is half the paragraph.
Would be unnecessary.
Right.
Yeah.
So you would delete from a maximum
Correct.
all the way to
Yeah.
the end.
Concealing fence.
Okay, so moved.
And there's one
Oh, yeah,
Go ahead, Paul.
more minor change to
sorry.
consider. When you go to the next section, it talks about the situation where you could go to the zoning board of appeals for a setback, for relief from setback.
Yeah.
So in that last paragraph, it says where the storage of a camper, mobile home, recreational vehicle, storage container, and or vehicle trailer is unable to comply. I guess I'm looking for your
You would strike.
feedback on, do you want to strike storage container? Because
Well, we
Every-
listed up a top that people can put stuff in storage containers.
right, the difference is what all the decisions you just made was to treat a storage container like a
Shed.
As
typical
a
shed.
shed.
This one.
Now,
I
a
see.
typical shed
Has different.
cannot
setback.
get relief from the setback. You can get a special permit if you're pre-existing non-conforming.
Right.
Yeah.
Not if you just want
So it
to,
would
that would be a variance. So this,
From that.
Yeah.
so simply
Right,
striking
because we'd
the
want
word
to keep
storage.
setbacks for it.
Yeah, striking storage container from that last one would preserve the ability to have flexibility for the campers and the rec vehicles, but it wouldn't
Require
grant that
setback.
same flexibility to a container, which we want to treat for the meantime
Would
as
you
a structure.
amend your,
Make that-
Yes, I'll amend the motion
you don't have to say it again, just you're
Okay.
gonna amend it to,
to remove from the last paragraph the word storage container.
and who seconded? Jamie?
Second.
Accept that? Okay, so that motion is now amended to, in three there, in permitted uses, three, the sentence would end after a first sentence remains, the rest of that first paragraph is gone. And then in the last paragraph of that section, we would remove in the first sentence, storage container, which is between vehicle and the word and.
So are we voting to amend it?
Yes.
And then we're going to vote to recommend it?
No, they changed the
Well-
motion. They changed the.
No, but she's right.
She's right.
We're going to
Yeah,
amend
we
it
do.
first.
And then we vote on it.
Then later we'll vote whether or not to recommend it to
Oh,
town
to
meeting.
recommend it, yes, that's what we're doing, but you
Yes.
don't have to do,
Right.
because they had accepted the amendment, we
Yep.
don't need to vote on that and then vote on that, okay. So this is to vote to change that section, which is 8I, as I just, as explained. Any further discussion? Bob, we'll vote, Bob.
You're muted, Bob.
Here, yep, it's a mute, you're muted. He puts up, okay. Busy, yes.
Aye.
Amy, Jamie,
Aye.
Suzanne,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Okay, so now, do we want to go through item by item or
Well-
all of 8? You can make a motion.
Just now that
or-
we've amended them, we'll
Anybody?
make a motion to recommend the zoning articles AA through 8I
Right, that's correct.
as amended.
No, as we've got, yeah. 8A through 8I. Do we have a second?
No, Jamie, do you want to vote them one by one?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
I mean,
It's a-
we can bang them out. if
Just
you want.
pull one out, just pull the fence one out. I'm fine voting for the others.
That's one out?
Yeah,
Do you want me to, I
sorry.
make a motion to recommend recommend the amended zoning bylaw for sign code,
Oh, for sign code?
not sign code. Oh my God.
For all zoning articles except
Fences.
fences.
Think about
Fence.
I don't know, I've lost track of where fences.
Where is fences?
It's a new prohibited use.
Oh, it's the.
It's
Yeah, it's
the,
not there yet. So we
probably-
can just call it the fencing prohibited use article.
Well, shouldn't it be with the other prohibited uses?
No, they're putting them as separate.
Separate. Okay,
I know, but is it 8C or 8D? 8D?
my bad. Okay, I make a motion to recommend the prohibited uses fences
Only.
only.
second.
And then we will vote on just
The rest,
prohibited
Just the fence.
uses
We can,
In general.
fences.
Okay, so this is just the fences.
What is, fences is what article?
Yeah.
under These numbers. That's what I need to know.
I thought you wrote them down
I
when,
thought you
when you
wrote
broke
them
out
down.
the prohibited
Maybe it's
uses.
eight,
I had fences
is 8D?
is 8C.
Not really.
We don't really need to know that, Jerry, as long as we know what article it is.
B was formula businesses and E was storage containers, which we just took out.
So HC was fences?
Yeah, but then there might be an,
Do we need to know that, Jackie, or can we just move?
I think we need to know that.
We do?
Yeah, because if we clarify it once, then we won't have to do it in 5 minutes.
Right. Oh, where is it?
Yeah, see, our articles were
It's
numbered
just
differently
really
than
confusing
the
with
way you
the
sent.
draft.
Fences was the first prohibitive use, so I would say that was
8C.
8C.
HC. Okay,
Okay.
HC. So the motion will be 8A, B, and D through I.
No.
No,
No?
I want to
She
do
wanted to
just,
just-
I want to take the fences out first.
Oh,
So,
8C,
so
okay.
Rich, you said it's eight
C,
C.
C.
Charles.
Move that we recommend 8C prohibited uses fences.
Second.
Second. All right, any discussion on 8C prohibited uses of fences?
And that's one you wanted to
Can
talk.
I get
Jane?
clarification? Are you just saying the prohibited uses fences is 8C?
Yeah.
Or are you, okay,
Yes.
okay.
I don't want to deep dive it. It's just, I'm broken record on this. I understand the spirit of this, but it goes back to the idea of an overreach by municipality. And I don't believe we are in the business of telling people what fence materials they can use. And I appreciate the spirit of it, but because of that, I can't support it.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, so this is a motion to recommend to the town Article 8C. Bob,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Jamie,
No,
Suzanne,
Yes.
and Jerry is a yes, so that's okay.
Thank you.
So now, do I hear? I didn't hear any.
I will make a
noise.
motion.
A motion from 8A, B, and
E, F, G,
All remaining zoning articles.
D, you're right, Jerry,
D.
D, E,
D
F.
through I. All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Amy. Any further discussion? Bob, we're gonna vote.
Yes.
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 Amy,
Aye.
Jamie,
Aye.
Suzanne,
Yes.
and I am a yes. Thank God. Thank you all. Now we're going back to 2. Article 2.
And again, a big thank you to zoning task force. I know how much work you did on
Listen,
all this.
I want to say thank you.
Yes,
Like I said,
we do know.
it's one of the committees you're never going to see me join. Thank you for working on all of this. And I know it's confusing to me sometimes in there, and you did a great job, and do it again. And as I said, you try it and then you look at, we have another town meeting another year. We.
You can always do a
Problems.
special town meeting
We
if
can
you
do-
get a group of things.
Just so the, just
She's not going to be the town manager, so she doesn't mind having special town meetings.
We've had special town meetings in the
I
fall.
know.
so the board,
Anyway, okay, thank you.
just so the board knows, the planning board will conclude its public hearing on March 30th.
Okay,
These articles will return to them reflecting
Right.
tonight's decisions, and then the board will, the planning board will take their votes on recommendation.
thank you very much.
Thank
Again,
you.
thank you very much.
We-
Okay, we're on to Article
Yep.
2A.
A.
We have 2A
Finance committee.
and 2D as in
Oh, okay, okay.
Dog, those are the two that, only two that are remaining.
After Mark.
I make a motion to recommend Article 2A, approve and fund the general fund operating budget.
There a second? Second from Jamie. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll go to a vote. Bob,
Yes.
Amy,
Aye.
Jamie,
Aye.
Suzanne,
Yes.
and Jerry's a yes. Okay, 2D is considering the funding for the other operating budget service enhances. That includes the COA position, recreation position, pre-K, the
Permitting.
permitting, and then also additional funds for our
Preschool.
that we can decide. I think the first thing is we need a motion to decide whether to include these in the warrant. That's number one.
I'll make a motion to include 2D in the warrant.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll have,
What about, were you trying to go A, B, C, and D, or are we doing these one at a time?
It was just to include it.
It's just to include it.
It's just to include it, and then we're gonna discuss whether or not we wanna.
what we
recommend
want to
it.
say on recommendation.
Right, but were we going to include them all, or are we going to do these?
You're going to, as the motion is to include Article 2D with the list of A, B,
As-
C, and D.
As written.
And then you can recommend them separately if you would like to, or not recommend them separately if you want.
So we're recommending that we include item D, or recommending we include A, B, C, and D?
You're putting A, B, C, and D on the warrant.
On the warrant,
Perfect. Okay.
they're all part of Article 2, right?
Got it.
Any further discussion? Okay, vote. Bob,
I would add them to the warrant.
Amy,
Aye.
Jamie,
Aye.
Suzanne,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Okay, now the question is, do we want to recommend this? So do I have a motion to recommend Article 2D at town meeting? That's how we'll do it. I need a motion to.
Right, we included them on the warrant
On
now.
the warrant.
Now it's
a
recommendation.
recommendation. Do I have a motion to recommend?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Discussion. Now, the discussion on this,
Can-
remember from last
Jackie?
time.
Yeah.
Yes,
Can I just interrupt? Bob, I wasn't sure whether you wanted to vote these separately to recommend or not recommend, or together. So we
Well,
should
that's what I was
decide that.
asking the group. That's what I was asking the group, and it looks like we're doing them together.
Yeah, I would lean toward together. I feel like it becomes a point of discussion at town meeting when you get into line items like that.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I just was checking because I
Yeah.
wasn't sure what.
I mean, that's
for the
my,
motion, you can vote no on the motion if you.
and then at town meeting, you get up and you explain
Yeah.
the why, I think is kind of how.
From our last meeting, part of the discussion, I raised this and I want to have it part of the discussion. This is, I don't know if it's a first time for Eastham, but it's the first time I've seen this from the point of view of my years in Eastham town meetings, that the select board is saying, here's some additional things beyond the budget
Mhm.
that we would like to give the town the opportunity to approve or disapprove, and here's how much it's going to cost you. And I think that's a great thing. I'm not sure whether I recommend yes or no. It's kind of like we've made a decision to put this before you, and we want to hear from you. We have only 5 votes. We have 5 votes. We'll vote however we want to, but here's the situation. And my view would almost be to write, and I could be convinced I'm not going to fall on a sword for this, to write that the select board wants to, this is an opportunity for the town to see if they want these services, and we await their decision.
And I
Or
think that,
something like that. I
I
don't
think-
really care, but I mean,
I think
I
it's,
think-
it's,
Bob and then Jamie.
are we going to vote are we looking to vote up or down on these, or are we looking to abstain? And is that really your question, Jerry?
Yeah, it would almost be, I'm not going to make a recommendation because it's up to you. But that's where I'm at. Anyway, to answer that, Jamie.
That's
I
where,
would-
that's where I'm at too.
I would be wildly embarrassed to abstain here, but not have follow through with abstaining through petitioned articles. Like this is an article that we vote to put on the warrant. It's our obligation to have an opinion at town meeting about this. I understand the idea of abstention when it comes to petitioned articles or articles that we did not choose to put on the warrant, but we were voted to make these decisions and make recommendations at town meeting. It's our obligation to stand by those decisions. I mean, like I said, you can vote no, but then at town meeting, get up and explain the why. But
I think we
truly
can,
believe.
I think we can vote however we think we should vote, whatever we think the right thing to do is. And we've presented a level set service budget. And we banged the gong on that. We've made that very clear. And what I would like to see on this is supplemental requests up at the title that says not included in the budget, even though it says that on the first bullet. There's nothing wrong with a little repetitiveness to bang home the point that we've presented a level budget. These are some of the biggest items that we shot down as part of presenting a level budget. And some of you may vote yes, some of you may vote no, some of you may abstain, but I think our vote is our vote.
So you would, Bob, you would like the title to be, the title
be-
to D to be changed to consider funding for operating budget service enhancements that were not included in the general budget.
Correct. I want to make it crystal clear that this is not part of the level services budget,
Okay.
which
It is in.
we hung our hats on.
Yeah, it is in the summary. And I think that that's also comes down to the person presenting the article's obligation to speak to the article when they present it. That's usually when that
Agreed.
type of thing is sent home.
Oh, absolutely agreed. I'm just saying on the written word, I think a little repetition is in order here.
We can wordsmith it too.
Yeah.
Consider funding.
Great.
So I got a motion to recommend Article 2D at town meeting. Any further discussion? Bob, vote.
I vote that we put this on the warrant, which we've done, and I'm going to abstain on my yes or no.
Okay.
Okay, abstention.
Aye.
Aye.
Jamie, aye. Suzanne.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll go aye on this one.
And I think it will be worth mentioning on town meeting floor
This is your call.
that, I mean, I could have gone either way on it. And Jamie, you were like, well, we put it on the warrant. We're obligated to vote on it. And my only reluctance in it is that, like, I don't want necessarily to, like, tip that scale. Like, I want residents to feel empowered to
And I think,
like vote against us in this
Right.
if they don't want to support it. But obviously, like, I do support all of those programs.
right.
So
And yeah, and the way I view it is like, this is our opportunity to place our vote. Like this is publicly, we are on the select board, we're publicly saying this is how I'm voting on this article to give people some guidance, but there is a tremendous obligation on the town meeting floor of the presenter to clarify the will of the board, I think.
Where's the vote's in? 4-1. Okay.
4-0.
4-0-1, excuse me, 4-0-1, which is fine. All right, I think that concludes every article. And so we've done our recommendations. So we're done with that. We've done the
my bedtime.
town clerk's election. We've asked manager report, any new or upcoming agenda items, follow up on previous items, anything of that sort?
No.
None. Any other business correspondence?
No.
Or business? Do Amy,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
You guys don't even let me finish. Okay, any discussion? Bob,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Jamie,
Aye.
Suzanne?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you all very much. We're done. We do not have to meet on the 30th. How do you like?
Okay, thanks, guys. Have a good evening.